everyone. Today we're going to dive into how an early Quranic chapter talks about sin. And the really fascinating part is where it starts. Not with some complex religious law, but with a universal sense of fairness that's kind of hardwired into all of us. So let's jump right in. Okay, so let's kick things off with a pretty big question. What if the whole idea of right and wrong, as this text introduces it, isn't some long list of rules you got to memorize, but something you already have? Like a moral compass you're just born with. All right, so to really dig into this idea, the source material zeroes in on this one really powerful example from the Quranic chapter Al-Mutaffifin. And it's all about a very specific kind of person. You know the type, the cheater in the marketplace. So here's the deal. Here's the problem it lays out. When this person is the one getting paid or receiving goods, they make sure they get every single bit of what they're owed, down to the last cent. But oh, when the tables are turned and they're the ones giving, suddenly they're shortchanging people. It's this classic fundamental double standard, right? And this is what's so crucial about the approach here. You see, the text isn't just dropping a new rule from the sky. Instead, it's like it's knocking on the door of a moral conscience that you already have. I mean, think about it. You don't need a sacred text to tell you that getting ripped off is just wrong. You just know it. Okay, but how do we know it's wrong? What is that feeling? Well, the source material argues it's because we all come pre-installed with this internal mechanism, this inner compass that just naturally points towards fairness. And this idea, this innate moral sense, is absolutely central. It's described as something that's just woven into the very fabric of our human nature. The source text actually has a name for it, fitra. Think of it like our moral default setting. But this moral sense isn't just some vague feeling. The source actually breaks it down into a few key parts that all work together. You've got reason and logic, like, does this even make sense? Then you've got empathy, that ability to feel what the other person's feeling. And of course, there's guilt, that little alarm that goes off when we know we've messed up. They're like a team, all working together. So to make this super clear, the source gives us a really simple thought experiment. It's designed to trigger that empathy. Forget all the abstract talk for a second, and just imagine you're the one on the receiving end of a raw deal. And right there, that's the whole point. The moment you put yourself in their shoes, bam, your moral compass just lights up. You feel that injustice. And that feeling, that empathy, that's a huge part of how we know right from wrong. And look, this method of appealing to our inner compass, it wasn't just for something like cheating in the market. The source explains it was used to tackle some of the most profound, horrific social evils of that time, like the practice of female infanticide. The text just puts it right there, forcing the listener to ask themselves a really simple but devastating question. Is that fair? Is that just? But all of this leads to a really unsettling problem, doesn't it? I mean, if we're all walking around with this built-in sense of justice, what happens when people just get away with it, when they commit crimes and face zero consequences? What happens when those scales of justice are just never balanced here on Earth? And that's where the text drops this pivotal, game-changing question. It connects our everyday feeling of, hey, that's not fair, to the need for some kind of ultimate judgment. It basically asks, do these people who cheat and hurt others, do they really think that's the end of the story? That they won't be held accountable someday? To really drive home just how limited our earthly justice can be, the source uses this really stark analogy. Okay, get this. Someone commits 100 separate murders. Our justice system, even at its most severe, how many times can it execute that person? Just once. So what about the other 99? What about their families? Where is their justice? You see, our justice system, by its very nature, is always going to be incomplete. And that nagging feeling, that sense that the books haven't been truly balanced, that's exactly what points towards the need for a perfect, ultimate kind of justice. And this isn't just some abstract theological point. The source paints this really powerful picture of a human moment we can all understand. When someone who's powerless gets wronged, their heart just screams out with this deep, unshakable belief, even if I can't get justice now, you will be questioned for this one day. It's this universal human cry for real, ultimate accountability. Okay, so if this day of ultimate accountability is real, how does it actually work? How is it fair? Well, the source describes a system of justice that is so perfect, so absolute, that it leaves zero room for doubt, no room for denial, at all. And to explain this, the source uses this really wild modern day analogy. It's brilliant. Imagine you're visiting a prison, and every single time an inmate says, "I'm innocent, I was framed," a screen on their forehead instantly lights up and plays a high-def video of them committing the crime for everyone to see. Suddenly, denial just isn't an option anymore. And that right there is the whole point. In a system with perfect, undeniable evidence, the entire conversation shifts. Nobody's arguing the verdict. Nobody's screaming, "I was framed." Instead, when they're faced with that cold, hard proof, the only thing left to say is, "I messed up. I'm sorry." And this perfect accountability, it leads to the final, ultimate reversal of all the injustices we see in this world. Finally, the scales are balanced. Perfectly. And this slide really shows you that final reversal. The source talks about how, back on Earth, the people who were doing all the wrong things would actually laugh at and mock the people trying to live by a moral code. But in the hereafter, the tables are completely turned, the roles are flipped, and those who were mocked are now the ones sitting back, watching as perfect justice is finally served. And for the righteous, the ones who listened to that inner moral compass and tried to be fair, the outcome is described as just a state of pure pleasure, of bliss. The source even describes this radiance of pleasure on their faces, like an outward sign of a life that was lived in harmony with their own inner sense of what's right. So let's bring this all the way back to where we started. That simple little act of cheating, that little flash of anger you feel, when someone cuts you in line or shorts you a couple of bucks. What does that feeling actually tell us about ourselves? Maybe, just maybe, it's a tiny echo of something much, much bigger, a profound built-in human need for a reality where every single injustice is answered and every scale is finally perfectly balanced.